to Resolution 639 under Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, President Hartman. I've been asked to read this resolution, and so I will. It's a resolution regarding state and local government funding. It's Resolution 639, and the impact of Pentagon spending. Whereas in 2011, Minnesota state government shut down over disputes as to how to address a $5 billion two-year budget shortfall. And whereas many small towns, cities, and rural communities throughout the state are managing austerity budgets, laying off police, firefighters, and teachers, and cutting essential services in response to cuts in state aid and/or federal cuts to community development block grants. And whereas communities throughout the state have suffered from a regressive property tax system due in part to state and federal cuts, and whereas Duluth taxpayers have contributed $450 million and counting toward the Iraq and Afghanistan wars alone, and whereas in addition to these costly wars, Minnesota taxpayers are spending more than $16 billion in 2012 for their share of the base Pentagon budget, a budget that increased from $290.5 billion to $526 billion between 2000 and 2011. And whereas in 2012, 59 cents of every dollar of federal discretionary spending is funding military purposes, and whereas on a local level, the 148th Fighter Wing is an example of a military unit that is doing more with less and serves as a model of prudent military spending, and whereas the budget for veterans is separate from the military budget and the nation has a responsibility to provide veterans with quality medical care and other support, including opportunities for meaningful jobs. And whereas although the Council highly values the service of our military, our nation needs to better balance its approach to national security and include the economic, social, and environmental needs of our local community, state, and nation. Therefore, be it resolved that the Duluth City Council hereby requests that our state and federal representatives make an effort to shift federal funding priorities from Pentagon spending to domestic, economic, social, and environmental priorities to better serve local communities. And I believe we do have some speakers tonight. President Hartman.
Thank you, Councilor Gardner. You are correct. We do have a list of speakers. Our first speaker for tonight will be Mr. Fletcher Hines, followed by Roger Cragen.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this resolution. I am speaking in support. And my name is Fletcher Hines. I'm a combat veteran of the United States Marine Corps. I fought in Vietnam for a hotel company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division. Received a Purple Heart, a Navy Achievement Award with Combat B, Combat Action Ribbon, and 2 meritorious unit citations. So I, as a veteran, and many other veterans in the audience here and watching us on television today, have participated in war and have actually killed in the service of this country. And I just am speaking from a veteran's point of view. And I just want to ask everybody here today on the council, in the audience, and watching TV, what does it mean when we say support the troops? What does that mean? And I'll tell you what it means to me as a veteran. First of all, I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. Supporting the troops does not mean spending billions of dollars on suspect military weapons systems. It does not mean enriching private contractors, buying political loyalty, or any of the other forms of military and war profiteering. And especially, it does not mean entering into unfunded wars that sink our country into record-breaking deficits. What it does mean to me, as a veteran, that we as a country are committed to transitioning our veterans back into a culture that is committed emotionally and financially to caring for their physical, mental, and emotional needs. It means they come back to a country that is committed to the well-being of its citizens and a country that spends money on education, healthcare, infrastructure, business development, and safety net programs. It means a country that takes care of those who are in need and takes care of those who are the least among us. You know, I don't 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 know, I As a veteran, I guess basically I'm saying we should not balance our federal budget on the backs of those who fought in the very wars that drove us into debt. And if we have a country have a heart and a conscience, we will move money away from militancy and toward common sense and decency. And my personal belief as a veteran is we will not and should not cut domestic spending and the social safety net programs of this country to serve the interests of war. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Roger Cragen, followed by John Clark Pegg.
Counselors, maybe some of you don't remember Ronald Reagan. I'd like to refresh your memories about Ronald Reagan. He jacked up the military spending in this country so high so that the Russians would bring their economy up, and it bankrupted Russia. It's now bankrupting us. Okay? The realities were, and think back, Powerball, etc., were invented to take the place of taxes so that it became a poor man's tax. So when we get these $1 million, everybody's running down to get a ticket and spending their hard or their scarce money to try to get rich. Now this money that's going, and you can go to Eden Prairie, you can go to outside towns, the money is not going to defend our country. It's paying executives, scientists, exorbitant things so that they can have multi-million-dollar homes in the cities. This is corporate welfare. And it started very early in our system, and you got to think about it. And it is cutting us down. We are being destroyed. We are being bankrupted in this country with a budget that's over 50% on the military. And that doesn't include veterans or the energy that's building the nuclear bombs. You think about it, folks. And if you got any common sense, you'll support this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. And our next speaker, Mr. John Clark Pegg, followed by Hale Moore.
President Hartman, councilors, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is John Clark Pegg. I reside at 1335 Minnesota Avenue. A longtime resident of the city of Duluth and the Park Point neighborhood, I am deeply saddened by the cuts that our city and school system have been forced to make in recent years, in large part due to cutbacks in funding from the state of Minnesota, which in turn has lost funding from the federal government. We have all been impacted by reduced services in our police and fire departments, roads and infrastructure maintenance, and educational and support services for our community's kids. In addition, the private nonprofit human service delivery system in our community has suffered, in large part due to a direct cutback in CDBG funding of over 50% from 2001 to the present. And many local programs have suffered, which serve the basic needs of those who are most vulnerable in our community. As another U.S. Marine Corps veteran of the Vietnam era, I believe in a strong and realistic national defense with adequate funding for our active duty troops, National Guard forces, and veterans. However, I also believe that an unexamined and unchallenged national defense budget that is contributing to reductions in funding for the needs of its own people is creating a nation that is less stable and secure. Our strength comes from within, and we have grown weaker in recent years. More money for